So a few weeks ago, those nice chaps at the Nikon School in London lent me a brand spanking new Nikon Z7 to play with. Now this is the first time I've ever used a proper mirrorless system of any sort, not just Nikon. I'm totally unfamiliar with them, and I wonder how I got on. So if you want a really quick capsule review, I love it to bits, but it's not quite there for me yet professionally. That's a touch superficial though. In a little more depth, starting with the cons, lots of the problems I've had with it are essentially related to the fact that it's mirrorless and all the quirks that go with that, which also explain many of the pros too. I'll give you an example. I had all sorts of problems with the displays. I couldn't often get either of them to work. And although you can do very clever things here where you can switch which display mode it prefers, whether it prefers the viewfinder or the rear display, I often found nothing was showing up. I was getting stuck with all sorts of things, until somebody pointed out that this tiny little window here, which is how it senses your head and your eye coming close to the viewfinder, if anything obstructs that at all, even like bits of dirt or a rogue hair or something, that can make the camera think you've got your eye pressed the viewfinder, and that can cause all sorts of problems. Keep that clean and you don't get those problems. The other little problems I've had related to viewfinder are, I admit, pretty stupid, but forgive me here. I've done stupid things like leave it in DX mode without meaning to. I once switched it to DX mode to do some reportage work and allow myself that extra bit of sort of reach on my telephoto lenses. And because of course the electronic viewfinder is an electronic viewfinder, not an optical one, so it automatically adjusts to DX mode, you don't notice any cropping. You very quickly adjust to the fact that you're looking at what's actually appearing on the sensor. And so unless you remember to switch it back, when you then pick it up the next time, you're still in DX mode. Now I'll hold my hand up completely and say that is totally my fault, but of course with the DSLR you're using little guidelines in the frame and you tend to spot pretty quickly, oh yeah, hang on a minute, this isn't where I want it, and I reset it. Of course that's also one of the greatest strengths of a mirrorless system. What I loved right from the get-go is that for video this is a far better platform than DSLRs, not least because I can actually just bring it to my eye and shoot with it like a video camera. I don't have to rig all sorts of extra bits like viewfinders and the rest to use this in a nice, convenient, handy way. It's a much more usable package, and I'm all about things being smooth and workflow being simple and rapid and easy to use, not having to adapt everything every single time I shoot a different sort of thing. The other wonderful thing about the viewfinder is that, of course, being electronic, I can have all sorts of different information up there. Now, if you've used mirrorless for ages, that's not news to you, but for somebody like me who comes from DSLRs, it's really handy having things like a histogram in the viewfinder as I'm shooting, having the artificial horizon there, having all the different modes displayed and all the different information up there. Much more information, for example, than just an exposure meter and perhaps a remaining frame count and what my exposure settings are. Very handy stuff indeed. The other big pluses for video are that it's got decent HDMI out and will actually let you film in NLog, although it limits you to ISO 800. So if you've got something like an external recorder like I have here, you can output in NLog, which gives you a much flatter linear curve to work from if you're into that sort of thing and you're prepared to do a lot of grading. It'll also do timecode, which I appreciate for the level of video that I tend to do. It's not a big issue, but it would work really well as part of a bigger multi-camera setup since it could do timecoding. And although I haven't played with it yet, it will of course take the little Nikon wireless remote, which you could rig to a handle somewhere and have it as a wireless trigger. Ideally if you've got it set to a shoulder rig, or even if you've got it on a remote mount somewhere. So as I probably hinted, lots of the advantages to it are kind of inherent mirrorless advantages. If you've been using mirrorless for years, you'll be looking at me going, duh, yeah, we already know this stuff, but forgive me, I've been a DSLR shooter for about 16 years, filmed before that in various forms, so mirrorless is still quite new to me. And one of the things that I love about it in that respect is how insanely customizable the menus are. The I button lets you have about, I think it's how many is it? It's about 10 different things. No, it's 12 different things up immediately to hand, and you can customize exactly which of those you see. That's a really useful thing to do because, of course, not everybody shoots the same. Not everybody wants access to the same features all the time. Perhaps the biggest single advantage of it, though, which going forward I expect I will take the most pleasure from, is the size and weight of it. When you compare it to digital SLRs, it is of course significantly smaller and lighter, and yet still a very, very solid package. Still, I believe, pretty weatherproof, pretty robust. Takes the same batteries as the D850 series of cameras, and can be charged with an external power pack. So if you take something like one of your anchors or whatever that you use to charge your smartphone, you can plug it straight into this and run it from there. So if you're on a long distance trip, if you're spending nights away from mains power, you can keep things going with one of those big power banks. The size and weight is such a plus because I frequently do shoots where I've got two DSLR bodies hanging off me, both with constant f2.8 lenses on, and I'm wearing them all day long. I'm often covering a lot of ground, I'm clambering over things, I've got other equipment attached, and it's very, very heavy. I imagine the weight of this is 2/3 the comparative weight, and I'd say about 2/3 the size, maybe in some cases half the size, depending on what lens you've got rigged. It's a massive, massive advantage for situations like that. A couple of little thoughts about the FMount adapter. Now, I understand why Nikon have done this. Of course, they've got to maintain some continuity with their legacy lenses, and personally it's handy for me because I was only lent the 24-70 and the 35mm, and of course there's only, I think, one other lens available at the moment. The problem I get with it is that the point of having a mirrorless over a DSLR is the size and weight, and if you start adding a great big chunk to the front of it, suddenly that starts to change. I've also found that it doesn't seem to focus quite as fast with AFS F-mount lenses. And the other weird problem is because of the way the F-mount adapter is built, there's a great big block on the bottom of it. And if you've got a tripod plate attached to here, you're going to have to move the tripod plate. You may find that that big block won't fit in other mounts you've got. So if you're mounting it on a shoulder rig for videoing with, it's probably inherent in the design of it because I don't see quite how else they could have done it. But yeah, it lets you use old-fashioned Nikon F-mount lenses going back for decades, but as much as possible I would use the dedicated lenses that come with it, which hopefully, of course, there'll be more and more and more coming out as the years pass. Two other little points. This is obviously by no means an exhaustive review. I've had it for a few weeks. I've done a handful of jobs with it, a handful of personal shoots. First off, it doesn't even need saying, the image quality is fantastic, both in video and stills. Obviously I've got the Z7, so that's 45mm pixel, full frame sensor. It's absolutely fantastic quality. I mean, that's a given, so I almost don't need to mention that, but in case you were concerned, yes, it's great. The other little thing that's worth thinking about that I've come across is a thing I can't remember, and I have to go and look at my notes. And the other little thing worth mentioning, and it seems to have got quite a lot of attention in online reviews, is the focusing speed. The focusing speed is just absolutely fantastic. It's incredibly good. It is not quite as fast as my D850 with the latest DSLR lenses. But when I say not quite as fast, that's exactly what I mean. There is a tiny, tiny difference, okay? I'd be perfectly happy using this in 90% of the jobs I do. Only the very, very fastest high-speed action stuff would I think, yeah, probably better stick to my DSLR. So in conclusion, would I go and buy one? Well, in truth, not yet. Personally, I think it's a fantastic camera. I think it'll be far better when there's a wider range of lenses available for it, because there's no doubt that you can only really take advantage of the best aspects of mirrorless systems with dedicated lenses rather than adding a large adapter on the front. It's just not quite there yet for me in that respect, because I wouldn't want to swap, say, two of these out for my entire DSLR system of two bodies, well actually three bodies and a few other bits and pieces. I can't wait to switch to mirrorless though, but I want them to be that little bit faster, and of course I need quite a bit of practice myself in the differences between them and DSLRs. I'm itching to use it for more video because, as I say, it's definitely a better video platform than DSLRs in terms of functionality and how easy it is to use. And as a stills camera, it's superlative quality as well. The only thing holding back, like I say, is at the moment with only 3 lenses available, I wouldn't drop all the money on it because, of course, being professional, I need a whole system, and I can't have sort of half my kit here, half my kit there, half my kit I have to use adapters for. I want everything to fit and be universal. I'm all about stuff working frictionless as much as possible. Although, saying all that, yeah, I will be slightly reluctant to give this back when I have to give it back off loan at the end of the little period that I've got it for, because it is a rather lovely piece of kit, and it does so much. I mean, I've barely scraped the surface of what this camera can do, and I've probably been rambling on far too long already anyway. It is a fantastic tool. I've not touched the Z6, I've only played with this Z7, and I can definitely see myself investing in mirrorless, you know, potentially a year, 18 months from now when there's a much wider lens selection. So look out in the second-hand market for all my old DSLR kit. There you go. I hope that was helpful and informative. If you've got any questions, stick them in the comments below, although I can't promise to go into too much technical detail because I'm still working my way around it myself. If you want more in-depth info, there's full courses online at photosmudger.teachable.com and lots of how-to and informative videos on my channel. So subscribe, like, comment, you know the sort of things to do. It's YouTube, you know the score. Ta-ra for now.